Hi, welcome back. It's good to see you again. Last time we got together and we talked about what is sin. And basically, in its simplest form, it is a breach of trust. It is a broken trust. You say, well, I still don't understand what that means. Well, let's look at it in our society today. When somebody lies, cheats, steals, they end up committing perjury, they murder, they are out pushing drugs on the street, they do kidnapping, they do things that are against the norms of society. Society says these are our expectations. We expect you to meet them. But unfortunately, some people decide to go their own way. They go, I don't want to abide by those laws. Those things don't mean anything to me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to thumb my nose at you for what you think I should be doing, because I'm going to live my life how I desire to live it. Well, that's not exactly the best course of action. I mean, we have speed limits on the freeway for a reason. We don't have an Autobahn like Germany does where you can go as fast as you would like to go. In the United States, we have different speed limits, and those speed limits are there for a reason. Why are they there? It's to protect, it is to help, it is to ensure that there aren't as many accidents on the roads. It also helps us conserve gas. There's a lot of reasons as to why those laws are in place. But when someone breaks that trust, someone's going down the freeway 100 miles an hour, and they lose control of their car, and they end up causing a 15-car pileup. Now, they walk away unscathed, but there's some people who died. There are people who are severely injured. What do we do with that person? Why were they going 100 miles an hour? Were they strung out on drugs? Were they out on a joyride? They stole a car? We don't know. But somebody has to pay the consequences for those actions. And that's what happens when you breach that trust, when you break that trust. And that's basically what sin is. That's why our prisons are the way they are. Because we've had so many people who have committed atrocities against the fellow man that now, where are we at? We have to do something. So when we talked about what is sin, again, it is a broken trust. And last time we talked about Adam and Eve and how they broke that trust with God. When God said, I don't want you to eat of that tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I don't want you to eat of that tree, because the day that you eat of it, you surely will die. Well, he was talking about a spiritual death first, because it was going to cause a separation between him and man. Him and man were like this. And then when they did that, it broke apart. And what happened? There was no more trust there. Not because God didn't love them, but what did man do? Man hid from God. He hid from God because he was afraid. They didn't realize, they didn't have on their tunnel vision going, if we do what God said not to do, that it's going to cause all these problems down the road. They didn't have that. They were innocent before they did this. Once they did this, then they began to understand the knowledge of good and evil. They began to understand why they should and shouldn't do certain things. But before, if they would have just trusted God and said, God said not to do that, and we're going to trust the Lord not to do that. And if they would have followed it, man would never have been put into the position that they are today. However, because man did, God was merciful still. God made a way for man. And as we studied a little bit further into the Word, we read about David. And we talked about David, how David slept with another man's wife and then had that man killed. And I talked to you about the child that had been born unto David and Bathsheba. And I had stated to you that he only lived for 7 days. Well, he only lived for 7 days after Nathan had come to speak to King David about what he had done. And that was such a shock to David, because he had hoped that the Lord be merciful and have mercy upon the child. But there was a consequence for the sin that David committed. And that wasn't the only consequence for sin. God said that the sword would never depart from David's house because of it. He also stated that what he did in secret, God was going to make a show of it openly. That he was going to allow someone in his own house to commit a crime against him and to sleep with his wives. It said that he would give his wives unto a neighbor. And it happened, but it didn't happen right away. There were things that took place, and it took place over a period of time. And after that time passed, sure enough, God said what was going to take place, and what happened with David was that his own son Absalom tried to steal the kingdom from him, and then he slept with his 10 concubines that he had left behind to take care of the house when David fled. David left 10 of his concubines behind. Now, they weren't actual physical wives, but they were part of his household. They were considered wives because they were only belonged to the king. They didn't belong to anyone else. And he left 10 of them behind. And this son, in all of his glory, because he was going to take the kingdom from his father because he thought his father was ill fit and he was going to rule the kingdom, he decides that he's going to, at the advice of one of David's advisors, to sleep with his father's wives. And he did. And that was a terrible thing. And David, when he came back into the city and he found out what happened, he put those women away. He didn't go back into those women again because his son did that horrible thing where he took those women and he had sex with them up on top of the roof. They put a tent up there, but still everybody knew what was going on. The whole city was aware that he was having sex with his father's wives, the concubines. And those women had to live out the rest of their lives in widowhood. The king never visited them again. And it was as if they wouldn't be able to be with another man, and they couldn't because they were still part of the king's house. So there was nothing they could do. They basically had to live by themselves and never be known by a man again. Well, that doesn't seem quite fair. But these are consequences for David's actions. And there was many, many things that happened. So I want to explain that to you, that there is an aftermath of sin. That there are consequences. Say, well, Sarah, not everybody's going to go to that extreme. Well, that's true. Let's look at a small child. You have a cookie jar in the house, and it's usually full of cookies. But you noticed that the cookie jar was quite empty, and you know that there was only one person in the house with you, and that was your 4-year-old. And you say to your 4-year-old, did you eat those cookies? And you can see the crumbs on their face because they haven't wiped them off because they're 4. And they say, I didn't eat those cookies. And you say, yes, you did. You ate the cookies. No, I didn't. Are you sure? I'm so sure, Mommy. Daddy, I did not eat those cookies. And you go, really? Is that right? You didn't eat the cookies. Nope, I didn't eat the cookies. Well, a few hours passes, and all of a sudden you hear, Mommy, Daddy, I don't feel so good. I'm going to be sick. Blah! And they've just thrown up everywhere. And you know it's because they ate a whole thing of cookies. And you're like, it's okay, it's all right, it's okay. Come on, let's go to the bathroom. I don't feel good. Blah! Just make it to the bathroom. And you get them to the bathroom, and they throw up in the toilet. And while they're throwing up in the toilet, you're like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. I'm here. It's going to be okay. But I don't feel good. I know, honey, you did eat all the cookies. Yes, I did. I ate all the cookies. I ate them. I'm so sorry. I ate the cookies. I'm sorry, Mommy. And you're like, it's okay. Daddy, I didn't mean to eat all the cookies. They were just so good. And I just didn't I wanted to eat the cookies. Well, I can see that. It's going to be okay. You're not going to feel good for a little bit. But we're going to get your stomach settled, all right? You stand here. I got to go clean up the mess that you made in the hallway. All right, so, and I'm not mad. I gotta go clean up a mess. So just stand right here, and I'll get you taken care of in a minute. Okay, all right. And they vomit a few more times, and finally they're so tired, and they just want to be held. Now that was a breach of trust, right? Because you trusted your child not to eat all the cookies, and they knew where the cookies were. They knew they could have a cookie every once in a while, but to eat all the cookies at once, there was a consequence for their actions. Now, why is that important? Well, when we mess up, and we do, there are consequences for our actions. Sometimes we've done stupid things, such as we've lied on the job. We've lied to get a job, and we get fired. Or we don't do our job once we get it. We're like, yeah, it's easy street. I can do this in my sleep. As a matter of fact, I think I will take a nap. And you lose your job. Or what about somebody who has stolen? They steal from the company. They're embezzlers. Someone who steals from their neighbor. Someone who says, I really like what you have. As a matter of fact, I think your wife should be my wife. And they start an affair, and they end up causing divorce and causing problems. There are consequences for those actions. And they're not always pleasant. They're not always something that we want. Does that mean that you're a terrible person if you've blown it? You're not a terrible person, no. Is it painful? Yes. Is it easy? No, because there are going to be steps that you're going to have to take because that trust has been broken. Let's say, for example, there is adultery involved and you find out that your mate has done this. Well, that's a terrible place to be. It's so painful to watch because you trusted this man or this woman who is your mate. And you have two choices to make. You can A, forgive them. B, try to make the marriage work. C, forgive them, but divorce them. Or try a temporary separation while you consider everything. Now, I brought up forgiveness twice. Forgiveness is not so much about it's not so much about you forgiving them, about what they did to you, but it's about you letting things go. Yes, you choose to forgive them. Did they earn it? No. Is it something that you want to give to them? Probably not, because you're pretty steamed, you're angry, you're hurt, and really the last thing you want to do is look at their face. That face that you trusted, that face that you loved. I mean, that face that you woke up to every morning and you went to bed with every night. That face that told you, I will love you forever. Till death do us part. I'm going to be there for you. And that trust has been broken. What do? Well, if you are a God, man or woman, you're going to seek out the Lord first and you're going to ask the Lord, what do I do? And the Lord's going to say to you, you need to forgive them. Even though I know it hurts right now and the last thing you want to do is forgive them. But I want you to forgive them so that God can work in you. He can bring healing into your life. But secondly, when you choose to forgive that person, the ball's back in their court. And thirdly, when you sit there and you seek God and you're asking Him about what to do, the Lord will direct you. And if you're trusting Him and you're believing Him and He says, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rework your marriage because this person really is willing to come back into the fold. And you're going to need counseling. You're going to need to do certain things to make this marriage work. And it's going to take work. And there's going to be days that you're going to be furious with each other. But I want you to take this one step at a time. And if you're willing to do that and both parties agree to do it, then God can bring you back together and make you one. But if not, if you're unwilling, God still loves you. God still loves that person. It's not that He doesn't love either one of you, but you both have to be willing to work it out. And you both have to seek God on your own and then together as a couple. But sometimes marriages can't be saved. And it's because one person or both parties refuse to work together. They say, you know what, forget it. And a lot of times it's from past hurt. It has to do with maybe their parents had been divorced, that they saw divorce over and over again in their families, and they're like, that's it. When I thought I was getting married, and I married a fellow Christian, and I married somebody who was supposed to be on the same page with me, and they committed this, they committed this against me. It wasn't just with themselves, they did it with me. Again, that's that broken trust, right? It's that breach of trust that we thought that we had worked out. Well, what happens if both parties decide to walk away? Well, God will allow it, and God still loves you both, and that doesn't change. But there's still healing that needs to come into place, and forgiveness is still going to have to happen. Forgiveness is still going to have to be there. Because without the forgiveness, how can you move forward? There's no way that not only that you can't be healed, but God also says in His Word that He will not forgive you if you can't forgive others. But it hurts so bad. Well, I had an opportunity several years ago where I was betrayed. Now, it wasn't in marriage, it was something else. And I was so angry. I was so livid. I went to the Lord and it was an hour drive home and I was telling the Lord how mad I was. And God said, you need to forgive them. And I said, I don't want to forgive them right now. I am so mad that they would do this to me. How could they do this to me? And the Lord said, they didn't betray you unto death. And I was like, oh. And then I thought about it. They didn't betray me unto death. But even Jesus, when He went to the cross and the things that he endured for us, the beatings, the whip that tore away his flesh, the crown of thorns that they put upon his head, how they pierced his body with nails, the things that he endured, the humiliation, the pain, the agony. Even as he was on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And these people really didn't know what they were doing. Did they know on one level? Yes. They knew they were crucifying Jesus. They knew why they were crucifying Jesus, but they didn't understand the full depth of it. And when the Lord reminded me of that, I had to sit there and I had to think. And I said, but it hurts, God. And he goes, I know it does. He said, but you have a choice to make. And I sat there. I'm still driving down the road, and I'm like, he's telling me the truth. He's telling me that I have a choice to make. Am I going to forgive, or am I going to hold on to it? So I decided, right then and there. I said, all right, Lord, I choose to forgive them. I choose to forgive them for what they did to me. They obviously weren't thinking about how it was going to affect me. And I choose to forgive them at this time. I said, but I'm still hurting and I'm still angry and I still want retribution, God. And the Lord said, I know you do. And he said, but if you trust me, I'll heal you and I'll work in them too. He said, but you got to let it go. So I said, okay. All right, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go. I'm not going to hold it against them. I'm going to love them where they are, not where I think they should be. I'm going to love them where they're at. I said, all right, Lord, I'll do it. And mercifully, the Lord not only healed me, but he repaired the relationship between me and that person, as well as the fact that that person ended up coming back to the Lord. And that was huge. Now, I'm not saying I did it, because I didn't, but the Lord did, because he saw that I was willing. He saw that I was wanting them to be whole as well as myself. And that is what forgiveness is about in a nutshell, and we'll talk more about that later. But I wanted to bring to you that there are consequences for those sins. And sometimes when that trust happens, when that breach of trust happens, there's going to be a time where you don't want to see that person, and you're going to break off ties with them because you're so hurt and you're so angry. But there's things that you need to do by going to the Lord and expecting him to help you with those changes, to help you to move forward. I want to encourage you. I want you to look to the Lord and say, God, help me, if I blow it, to quickly ask for forgiveness, because I don't want my life to be full of sin. I don't want to be that person, Lord God, that we were like this and then we went like this. I want us, Lord God, to be so close that we're one. I want to be that person like David was, who was a man after your own heart, a woman after God's own heart. I want that. You know, David so missed it. And David paid the price. He lost children because of it. He lost his home for a while. He lost 10 of his wives, the concubines that he had left behind. He lost so much. But yet God was merciful to him. And God gave him a son. And his name was Solomon. And Solomon ended up becoming the richest and the wisest king that had ever been in Israel. And no one had wealth like Solomon. Nobody. I know that they're trying to refute some of that and some of the different things that are out there, saying that there were kings that were wealthier. But God said that no one would have the wealth like Solomon had. And God said that no one would have the wisdom that Solomon had. And we'll get into wisdom and things later as well. But I wanted to explain to you, God was merciful. God gave David another son for the one that was lost. God gave him a son who would seek the Lord for wisdom first. And he meant it. And he was able to be a ruler, a good ruler, for many years over Israel. Now, I'm not saying that Solomon got it all right either, and he didn't. He missed it on some stuff too. But we're not here to talk about that right now. I'm here to talk to you about that God is merciful. And if we come before the Lord and we ask for forgiveness, He's going to not only cleanse us of all unrighteousness, but He is going to help restore us. He's going to take us from being down here and bringing us back up here. He's going to allow us to be put into a position where we can show others our mistakes, and they can learn from those mistakes. They can learn from what we screwed up on, if we'll let Him. And is it going to be painful? Because there's going to be consequences. And when we do stuff that's wrong, there are going to be consequences for what we've done. And we just need to accept those consequences and say, all right, Lord, I'm going to go ahead and go through this. But I'm going through it because I know you're with me and I know you're going to be merciful to me. And if there's any way that we can avoid any of this, I would really appreciate it. But I do understand that sometimes I have to pay a price. And it's not always pleasant, and it's not always pretty, and it's not always the best thing. But if we stick with the Lord and we do what He says to do, He will have us come back out on top because He loves us, and because we're trusting Him, and because we're expecting Him to do something great in our lives. I want to encourage you. No one's perfect. No one's going to be right all the time. No one's going to get it right all the time. Dig into the Word of God. Choose to speak His Word. Choose to trust Him. Say, yeah, but Sarah, I can't trust anyone because everybody I've ever known has broken trust with me. That's probably very true. There are some people who have had broken trust up one side and down the other. But God can bring healing, and God can bring trust, and God can bring those things back. You know, we talked about adultery. And sometimes when that mate doesn't want to come back into the fold, it's not your fault. Especially if you have sought the Lord, you've chosen to forgive that person, you've chosen to move forward. That's not your fault. But what God can do is bring you a mate who will love you, who will be a blessing to you. Are there going to be issues from time to time? Probably. But it's because you're two different people. And you need to learn to work together and trust the Lord and let Him work in you, His glory and His honor. Thank you for coming today. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Have a blessed day.